Welcome to Cody in the Cinema. I spent some time camping over the weekend at First Landing State Park, Virginia Beach. Had some time to think in my van while I was enjoying the sounds and the quiet, when it was quiet, and the waves. And I asked myself, the Flash Sale is coming up for the Criterion Collection. What films would I recommend most to somebody who has either a limited amount of money to spend or really wants what someone who has watched a lot of these feels like is like the cream of the crop, the very best stuff, their very favorite stuff? And I came up with 3 titles after I sort of debated with myself on what to include here, because for me, whenever I was first buying Criterions in these sales, I know I really wanted to just grab the stuff that was the most essential and important. So I'm going to share my perspective with you, and you can share your recommendations in the comments if you would. I'm going to be focusing on stuff that's come out in the last year or so, stuff that's a little bit more recent to the collection. I do have an older video where I went over Barnes & Noble half-off sale recommendations of stuff that I pulled right off the shelf just because I loved it. You can check out that as well. I'll link that in the description. But for now, let's get started with these 3. So the first that I feel like probably was just a slam dunk for everybody who was looking for this film, I certainly was for many years. If you have not checked this out yet, this is essential. Soy Cuba, I am Cuba. This is the same director who did The Cranes Are Flying, and that film is also very masterful. Whenever I was watching The Cranes Are Flying, I watched the second film in the Before trilogy, and then it had there was a nod to that, to a stair scene from that, and I just thought that was cool and how influential that filmmaker was. Much like this film, Scorsese was a big fan of this, and you get to hear from him in the extras. I love the essay that's included. There are parts that I didn't necessarily agree with. I thought that the essay writer was a little hard on the actors, but if you're looking for sort of the political context, the social, historical context, this essay is very good, and it also talks a little bit about some of the some of the technical pieces. And I'm going to actually start out first reading you a segment from that, whether you know much about this film or not. So he's talking about critics praising the formal achievements of the film, and I wanted to specifically discuss that because that's the very best part of this film, is how beautiful and well shot and composed it is. So these critics, he says, these critics all mention the sequence shot that follows someone's funeral. This character, I'm just going to tell you, it's a character's funeral. Still astonishing today for its originality of composition and the audacious movement of the handheld camera, which, and this is the part, this is one of the many scenes that blew me away in this film. So we're talking about handheld camera, which begins by showing a public burial in close-up, rises surprisingly to the top of a building, crosses various balconies, enters a tobacco factory, then goes out the window and levitates over the crowd. That is one of the most mind-boggling sequences I've ever seen in a movie. Additionally, there's a tracking shot in the beginning that goes by a swimming pool that, if you love like the tracking shot from, say, Goodfellas, or if you've been watching Bela Tarr and Berkmaster Harmonies, there's a tracking shot in there that's really good in the hospital. You're going to love that scene if you haven't seen it. So from a technical standpoint, I Am Cuba is a masterpiece, and the story is a series of vignettes about events related to the Cuban Revolution and so forth. I'm not the historian here to really explain that to you, but it is sort of a propaganda piece of the time, and I don't mean that negatively. I don't think that makes the film bad or anything. I mean, we have plenty of films that have lots of historical value, that are fun to look at, that are beautiful, that were originally propaganda pieces. An example that I might cover in my Russian films video, Alexander Nevsky, right, was like that. So I think you definitely should be seeing this film for that alone. But I really liked the emotion of the actors. I felt like the struggle of the people was evident. There are plenty of reasons why you can see a revolution happening with these people potentially. And like I said, the actual visual style and composition is just unmatched. And I just really think you have to have a copy of this. I don't think you should just see it. I think this is one of those shelf pieces for your Criterion collection that everybody should have. The film affected me greatly. I've only seen it once, so those of you that have studied it or know a little bit more about it than me and know a little bit more of the historical context, if I'm explaining something wrong, please let me know, or if you want to add something in the comments, because I just don't have as much knowledge in terms of the context as I should. What I do know is that from a technical perspective, this is as fine as anything I've ever seen. And gosh, I loved watching it. So the second one that had an impact on me, and this is kind of my favorite of these three, I just mentioned that I was camping and I've been going a lot outdoors. I'm getting ready to go, hopefully, fingers crossed, all the way to Arizona. I'm in Virginia right now in a few weeks here for spring and just kind of hit up some parks. And I find as I get older that I enjoy the simple pleasures of nature, the outdoors, and small minimalist kinds of things. Even trying to move into a house has just been so overwhelming in some ways. Someone told me, a student of mine actually told me that I was the most minimalist man she'd ever seen. And I really took that as a compliment. I don't know. The only part of me that's not minimalist is probably my giant collection of movies. I don't know. Maybe that's a contradiction. But the film that really just has invigorated this part of my life is a Wim Wenders film I talk about on here quite a bit that is essential, in my opinion, for you to have. This is called Perfect Days. The actor who starred in Cure, if you really liked Cure, is in this. He's a very simple man. He has these tapes that he plays, like actual, the tapes that you have to, that you can wind them, or eject them from the tape player. And he takes pictures with like a disposable camera, and he goes to work every day cleaning toilets. And what a pitch for a movie that is. But these aren't just any toilets. These are a profoundly useful, impactful public service. And the whole film seems to be, on some level, a message about a society that works together to create a world that is, simply put, more beautiful and more accessible to everyone. And I am in love with this. I showed this to my wife, who I didn't have any idea how she'd react to it. I didn't want to show it to anyone else because I was just like, almost like, oh gosh, is this just going to be too boring? And she loved it. Even though it's very dialogue driven, it's you know what it is? It's the beautiful, gentle soul that we see on screen here who really sells this for us. I'm looking at the back of this, channeling his idol, Yasujiro Ozu, who, if you watch my videos, you know he's my favorite director. Wenders crafts a serenely minimalist ode to the miracle that is the here and now. And that's what so much of the film's about. It's about being present in the everyday and the right now. And I just fell in love with it. There's actually a lot of like where the director takes sort of shots of the trees, but it's not goofy and it's not like overly artsy. It's just a character engaging with the world around him in a meaningful, thoughtful way. And I found myself doing that more since. And really, just watching Ozu films in general will make you more thoughtful and mindful. And I really thought, when I was camping last night, and I'm kind of just, lying there in the back of my van on my memory foam mattress, I'm thinking like, this is living, and if I had to have a film that captured that, it would be Perfect Days. This is one of my favorite films though. So there's that. Okay. So definitely do that, especially if you love Yasujiro Ozu, you have to see Perfect Days. Okay. It is what you might call a slow burn, maybe, although I don't know. It's kind of entertaining. There's a character who wants to like pawn off all of the dude's tapes, for money, so he can like go on dates with this girl. It's funny. The comedy in there works really, and it's a funny movie. So I don't know. I think you'll like it. The film for me as a Western fan. This is the third thing I wanted to talk about. As obviously, if you are a Western fan like I am, and if you can see in the background, I really love Westerns. There was a film I've been waiting forever to get some kind of cool release, and it did get a Criterion release, and I was so happy about it, and I was so excited, and I watched this movie again on the Criterion. It's one of my favorites in the last year, and I think it's one of the great all-time black and white Westerns. So I couldn't, if you're asking me like in the last year what's one of my favorites, it would be Winchester 73. This is a James Stewart film. Shelley Winters is in it. Dan Duria, which he's great in this. I haven't loved him in everything, but he's great in this. And, that he's James Stewart's character Isn't another Anthony Mann Western here? This might be the best one. I don't know. You all can tell me if you have one you prefer. And he's basically ends up in this. He ends up in this town doing this, gun battle for a gun. Not a. Okay, it's a contest. It's a shooting contest. And in the course of that shooting contest and trying to win that rifle, this Winchester 73, the thing kind of passes hands from one owner to another. After this sort of this shooting match that's going on with some of the characters. There are mythological Western historical-ish tropes that are played on so well here. Wyatt Earp, all of that. At the beginning scene, some people don't like them as much because they feel like the real action happens after James Stewart leaves town. I love all of it. Every single scene. I think Shelley Winters at one point becomes a damsel in distress of sorts, although in typical fashion she is kind of, a pretty powerful presence on the screen. And I think she holds her own with James Stewart. If you recall The Night of the Hunter and how submissive and passive she was in that film and how Robert Mitchum completely destroyed her, this is a little bit different than that. There are also some great individual just like gunfights, and there's a really good fist fight in a bar in this thing that I really loved. It was so intense, and like James Stewart just completely just has someone in a hold, and it's like the urgency of the Wild West is just right there in that bar with you. And I think it is one of those westerns that is deeply psychological. It does make you think about what is this character's motivation or that character's motivation. It's kind of moralistic. Like there's definitely some life lessons being taught here. You've got a little bit of that. What's the supernatural? I think I've talked about this before. The supernatural episode where there's the rabbit's foot that seems to be good luck, but maybe is bad luck, like that kind of thing going on with the gun. And overall, it's an interesting statement about guns and violence because it doesn't have a simple, easy answer, which I really like. It's not guns good, guns bad, guns win, guns don't win. I think the messaging there is pretty, pretty layered, which you would expect from a director as good as Anthony Mann. So definitely get Winchester 73 if you haven't yet. And I think you're going to enjoy it. Those have been my 3 favorite in the last year or so. So I wanted to share those with you. If you like the content, want to click the like button, please do that. It will grow the channel, and consider subscribing if you haven't, because I do cover a lot of these Criterion topics. I cover Westerns, just physical media that I'm watching, different things that I enjoy about movies. And, let me know what you're watching or what you think about, Criterion stuff or what you're going to pick up in the Flash Sale. And we'll see you next time on Cody in the Cinema.